They called her a witch, a troublemaker, a fanatic. The Germans couldn't stop her. The Belgians couldn't catch her. The British finally imprisoned her for 20 years. But even from her prison cell, her spirit shook 3 empires. Her name was Muhumuza, and they erased her from history because she proved that African spiritual power was real and terrifying. Before she was a warrior, before she shook empires, Muhumuza was a royal wife in the court of King Kigeli IV Rwabugiri of Rwanda, but she was never ordinary. While other royal wives focused on palace politics, Muhumuza sought out the Nyabingi priestesses, the spiritual leaders who carried out the ancient knowledge of the land. She learned their ways, their power, their connection to the spirit of Nyabingi. When King Kigeli died in 1895, everything changed. His successor didn't want powerful women around, especially not one who commanded spiritual authority that rivaled the throne itself. Muhumuza went north to the borderlands where Rwanda, Uganda, and Congo met, where no single colonial power could claim full control, where the Nyabingi movement still thrived. And there she had a vision. The spirit of Nyabingi, the legendary queen who had fought invaders centuries before, came to her, told her she was chosen, told her the Europeans were coming, and only spiritual power could stop them. Muhumuza declared herself the embodiment of Nyabingi, not just a priestess, a queen priestess. And the people believed her, because when she spoke, lightning would flash. When she blessed warriors, they said bullets couldn't touch them. The colonial powers dismissed it as superstition. They would learn otherwise. In 1899, the Germans came. They had conquered much of East Africa. They had modern weapons. They had military training. They thought this witch queen would be easy to handle. Colonel von Gatzen laughed when his scouts warned him about Muhumuza. A woman who thinks she's possessed by spirits? This will be over in a day. But when the Germans attacked Muhumuza's forces, something happened that their military training hadn't prepared them for. The Nyabingi warriors fought like they were invincible. They charged machine guns without fear. German soldiers swore they saw bullets carve away from the warriors. Soldiers who had conquered nations found themselves terrified of an army that had believed a queen priestess had made them immune to death. The Germans retreated, not because they were outgunned, but because they had encountered something their rational European minds couldn't explain. Faith so powerful it became real. The Belgians thought they would have better luck. They controlled the Congo, a territory built on horrific violence. They knew how to break resistance. But Muhumuza wasn't like other resistance leaders. She didn't fight conventional battles. She melted into the jungle, appeared where they didn't expect. Her fighters seemed to know Belgian movement before the Belgians did themselves. The Belgians sent expedition after expedition. Each one returned empty-handed or didn't return at all. They called her a witch because they couldn't accept the truth. She was smarter than them. She knew the land, she had the people's loyalty, and she understood something Europeans never grasped. Spiritual authority was as powerful as military force. For years, she made the Belgian Congo's eastern border ungovernable. The British were different. They were patient. They studied her patterns. They infiltrated her network. They found people willing to betray her for money or position. In 1911, they finally set a trap she couldn't escape. Her son, Ndugutse, fought beside her that day. He had grown into a powerful warrior, carrying on his legacy. When the British ambush closed in, he did what any son would do. He protected his mother. Ndugutse died that day, cut down by British bullets while giving Muhumuza time to escape. But she didn't get far. Wounded, grief-stricken, surrounded, Muhumuza was finally captured. The British had done what 2 other empires couldn't, but their victory would prove hollow. They locked her away. 20 years in a British colonial prison in Uganda. They thought if they removed her from her people, the resistance would die. They were wrong. From her prison cell, Muhumuza's legend only grew stronger. Her followers said she could send messages through dreams, that her spirit walked free even when her body was caged. The British interrogated her repeatedly. They wanted her to renounce Nyabingi, to tell her followers to submit, to break. She never spoke, not one word to her captors, for 20 years. And outside those prison walls, the Nyabingi resistance continued. Her followers fought in her name. Her priestesses carried on her teachings. The movement spread faster than ever. The British had captured her body, but her spirit and the spirit of Nyabingi was beyond their reach. Muhumuza died in prison in 1931. She never saw freedom. She was buried in an unmarked grave. The British made sure of that. They thought with her death it was finally over, but the Nyabingi movement didn't collapse. It exploded. Her death made her a martyr, a saint, proof that the spiritual power was real, because even death couldn't stop her. For another 15 years, the British fought the Nyabingi resistance. They arrested priestesses. They banned the movement. They tried everything. Nothing worked. The Nyabingi movement continued long after Muhumuza's death, long after the Germans were gone, long after the Belgians pulled back. It outlasted all three empires. When Uganda finally gained independence in 1962, the spirit of resistance that Muhumuza embodied had won. But why don't you know her name? Why isn't Muhumuza taught in history class? Because the colonizers wrote the history books, and in their version, she was a witch, a troublemaker, a primitive rebel who didn't understand civilization. The missionaries called the Nyabingi movement devil worship. They convinced post-independence African governments to suppress its history because it was embarrassing, too spiritual, too unconventional, too powerful. Even today, most textbooks don't mention her. If they do, it's a footnote. Local unrest, religious fanaticism quickly suppressed. But her people remember. In Uganda, Rwanda, Congo, the grandmothers still tell the story, the real story, of a queen who fought 3 empires and never surrendered, who proved that spiritual power could challenge military might, who chose 20 years in prison over one moment of submission. Here is the part that makes Western historians uncomfortable. The spiritual power was real, not metaphorically, not it gave them courage, real. European officers brought in their private diaries, not official reports, but personal notes about things they saw that made no sense. Bullets that wouldn't fire, warriors who should have been dead standing up, weather that changed when Muhumuza prayed. They dismissed it publicly as coincidence or exaggeration, but in their private writings, you can feel their fear, their confusion, their inability to explain what they witnessed. African oral histories don't have that conflict. They state it plainly. Muhumuza had spiritual power, the kind that made empires afraid. Maybe that's why they erased her, not just because she fought them, but because she proved that African spirituality was as powerful as European guns, and that truth was too dangerous to allow into history books. Today, the nations Muhumuza defended are free. Uganda, Rwanda, Congo, all independent. The Germans are gone. The Belgians are gone. The British are gone. But her spirit still there. In the mountains where she fought. In the stories grandmothers tell. In the young people who learn that resistance is not futile. It just takes time. She spent 20 years in prison and died in captivity, but she won because the empires she fought collapsed and the people she protected are free. The Europeans called her a witch because they couldn't understand power that didn't come from guns. They called her a rebel because she wouldn't submit. They erased her from history because she was too dangerous to remember. But you can't kill a spirit. You can't imprison an idea. You can't erase truth forever. Her name was Muhumuza. She fought the Germans. She fought the Belgians. She fought the British. She never surrendered. Not once, not ever. And now you know her story.